My name is Phil Sitter. For those of you who don't know, I'm the president and CEO of the Greater Keene Chamber of Commerce, and I know most of you in the pictures there, either from Peterborough or west of Peterborough, and we're thrilled that you've joined us here this morning. We're going to take a few minutes up front to kind of give you a little bit of overview from Tom Minkler, who is the board chair for the Greater Keene Chamber of Commerce, and Patty Blake, who's the co-board chair of the Greater Peterborough Chamber of Commerce. And they're going to give you some thoughts, and then we're going to open it up to Q&A. As most of you know, this was announced about a month ago, I think, 3 or 4 weeks ago, something like that. And it's still underway, not quite final yet, but we thought this would be a good opportunity for people to ask some of the questions that we've been hearing anecdotally, and try to stay ahead of some of those. Okay, without further ado, I'd turn it over to Tom Minkler from the Clark Mortensen Insurance Agency on Main Street in Keene, who is the current chair of the Greater Keene Chamber of Commerce.
Hey, thanks, Phil, and thank you all for taking the time out of your busy day to be with us. We're really happy and very excited to announce the merger of the Peterborough and Keene Chambers. There are a lot of reasons that brought us to the conclusion that this was a really important next step in the evolution of both of the chambers. And we believe this is the start of a new vision for our overall region, not just the two communities. And the things that we can accomplish, we think, are unlimited by bringing the two forces together. Just a little bit of background, maybe answer some of the questions that we think will come up today. We've been working on this now for about a year. And as you can imagine, there's a lot of things that we have to cover and think about. But the boards of both organizations spent a lot of time making sure that our collective members would benefit and be stronger as a united force. The merger itself, as Phil mentioned, is not technically official. That's a few weeks away because we need to complete some paperwork, and the new board of directors needs to ratify the merger. However, representatives from both of the boards have been meeting weekly over the last few months to be sure that we continue the missions of each organization pending the final merger documentation. We look at 2021 as a bridge year for the merged organization. We've got a lot of ambitious and special projects on our plate, and we want to make sure that we manage and accomplish all of our goals to the benefit of our collective members. We're going to be hearing more about those projects over the coming weeks and months as we go along. I think at the core, we believe that the chambers really serve two key responsibilities. Number one is to promote and provide marketing support on a member-to-member basis in order to help business owners and organizations sustain and grow their businesses. And two, to promote the entire region to help attract new customers and clients for our members and attract new businesses to our region. And we think with the combined entity that will approach 700 members when we're fully merged, we can use that to the best of our abilities and the best efficiencies of scale to better accomplish those key goals. And there are other vital roles the chamber plays and will play helping our members, but helping our members thrive is key. We've been asked what the new entity will be called. And while we haven't decided on a final name or logo, it's our intent to prominently feature both chamber names within the merged entity new identity. We've also been asked, is this going to be Keene taking over everything? And the answer is absolutely not. We look at this as a merger of two equal organizations that bring a lot to the table. And to that end, we wanted to make sure that we had good representation on the new merged board. So we're happy to let everybody know that we're fortunate that we have members from the existing Peterborough Chamber now on the new boards that are going to represent both of our communities. Karen Hatcher, who's on the call today, is on the board, along with past Peterborough Chamber, Bill James, and current Peterborough Chamber co-chair, Patty Blake, as Phil mentioned earlier. You're going to hear from more about Patty in a moment, but in fact, Patty is the chair-elect of the new merged board and will take my place at the end of 2021. We collectively have both had a lot of events during the year over the past number of years. We're looking how to best manage those going forward. As you can imagine, and for example, Peterborough has your event tonight, and we'd love to see that continue. The Keene Chamber has our annual gala in early January, which is a big event. We're looking to find the best way to accomplish, having all of those things still continue in the merged organization. And another question we've been asked, is there going to be a chamber presence in Peterborough? And the answer is yes. We're looking and deciding right now what the best way to do that is, but we plan to have a physical presence there and some folks to man that location once we get going. So that's just a really quick overview. I'd like to turn it over to Patty now to have her talk to you about the Peterborough side of how she sees the merger going.
Thank you, Tom. Well said, and you covered a lot of very pertinent points that we've been talking about since we reinvigorated these discussions. I want to get to the Q&A as quickly as possible, but just a couple of thoughts from the Peterborough perspective. For those of you that don't know me, although I do recognize a lot of faces out there, and it's great to see you all, I work for People's United Bank. I've been a market manager here for 14 years. And the really cool news is my territory is the Monadnock region. My branches are in Chesterfield, Keene, Peterborough, Jaffrey, and Milford. So having a regional presence from a business perspective, I get all the benefits. And the fact that we're now going to have this from a chamber perspective makes all the sense in the world to us. As Tom said, Karen and I are now on the Keene Chamber, which I think sends a very strong message about our commitment to the merger and having really strong representation from both markets. And let's face it, the last year or so, for those of you who are from the Peterborough market, it's been particularly challenging. For a while we've had a volunteer staff, 100% volunteers. We've had some changes in board members. We've had, limited ability to do our normal events and sponsors and things like that. And then you throw the COVID thing on top of it, it's been a little bit rough. And although in one iteration of another, conversations between Keene and Peterborough have been going on for a long, long period of time. But I think the timing to reinvigorate the discussions, it couldn't have been any better. I think everything was aligned. So we were really excited to be able to sit down at the table and, get these conversations going on again. And I'm really happy to say, very proud to say that since we've made the announcement, reaction of our members here in Peterborough that I've spoken with, overwhelmingly positive. Glad to hear it happen. It's about time. Can't make things any better for us in this market over here. They're very anxious to reconnect with the chamber and its members, again, after a tough couple of years. They recognize we've been a very viable chamber, have done a lot for our members over here. So I think they're very anxious to get back and be bigger and better than ever before. And I also think that they see the value in the larger scope. We've got more members to network with and work with. We've got, as Tom said, increased external marketing value because we're going to be promoting the region as a whole, not two separate pieces. So in essence, and I've used this phrase before, I think we're creating a continuous corridor, between the two markets for not only our members, but for, visitors to the region as well. And we're going to do everything that we can to continue to promote that and ultimately have that trickle down to be beneficial to our members. So like I said, the Peterborough team was a very active team in the past, and we're just really anxious to work with our colleagues in Keene and get us back on track where our members want us to be for sure. So that's just kind of my perspective on the feedback that I've gotten from the Peterborough market and truly how I'm very happy and excited we are to be a part of this whole merger for the region.
Thank you, Patty. Well said. And people are starting to type questions into the chat box. And so I encourage you to do that and or use the raise hand piece of the Zoom mechanism there. I would just add a couple of points here, and Tom touched on a couple of them. In some ways, getting to the actual date of the merger, which as Tom alluded to, will be in the next few weeks from a legal and technical perspective. In some ways, that's all the easy part. That gets us to the starting line. That's not the finish line. and it'll be incumbent upon all of us, staff and board members and volunteers, to demonstrate the kind of value that chamber members have come to expect, and we're going to set the bar high for ourselves on that score, and hope that all of you will help us reach that bar. So I see a number of people on here who I might put on the spot to offer some thoughts. I know some of you and are not hesitant to offer thoughts in these kind of forums. So I'm gonna pick on Laura Gingras for starters, because I know she represents a significant employer and business in the Peterborough area, right down the street from where I live, actually. So Laura, I'll toss it over to you.
Great, thanks, Phil. My name is Laura Gingras. I work at Monadnock Community Hospital here in Peterborough. I've served on the chamber board over the years and been an active participant. And I am so excited to reiterate what Patty said. I feel this is such a great thing for the Peterborough Chamber and the whole Peterborough region. As we all know, we're always better when we work together, in this region especially. And I've worked with Phil on the Market the Region initiative, which is a Eastern and Western Monadnock region initiative. And I have a lot of confidence in Phil, and that he will lead this combination and do what he says, and Tom, that this is not just a Keene initiative. But you know, Keene is a little bigger than Peterborough. We have to face that, and we love Keene, and probably some of us over here need to get over to Keene more often, because there's a lot of great things to do there. So I'm really excited about this. I can't think of any questions right now, but thank you for giving us the opportunity to hear some of the details.
There are a couple of employees of the city of Keene on the call today, so I'm not going to put them on the spot quite yet, but I'm giving them a heads up that might happen. There are a couple of questions in fact, one of them just put something in the chat box. So maybe Elizabeth, do you want to number one, introduce yourself for those of you who don't know you, and also just kind of reiterate what you had typed in the chat box?
Sure, I'd be happy to. My name's Elizabeth Dragon. I'm the city manager for the city of Keene. So I do have a lot of questions. I think this is the first public forum. I know there's been a lot of conversation between the two chambers that has occurred behind the scenes and confidentially, but I don't know about the engagement with the public and the full membership. So that was one of my questions. Also, what is the boundary for this combined Chamber of Commerce? What are the similarities of those communities that are in this boundary? And I am also wondering about the reach and whether or not this merger would in fact dilute the marketing efforts of the businesses within the current boundaries. And so those are my questions.
Good questions, Elizabeth. Let me take a shot at a couple of those, and Tom and Patty can chime in as well. How we define the region is always been a challenge. Whenever anybody has ever said the Monadnock region, this goes back probably as far back as the 1930s and the Monadnock Region Association, and how it defined itself then. Generally speaking, the way we define it is Cheshire County plus Western Hillsborough County. Generally speaking, we think of Temple Mountain as kind of a boundary, although there's no reason in particular why it could or should be. But that just physically, for those of you who go up and down Temple Mountain on a regular basis, it kind of feels that way sometimes. The other way to look at Western Hillsborough County in some ways is the Kentucky River Valley. And it's not exactly the Conval School District, but it has some similarities to that. Another way to look at the region is the way the state looks at the regions of the state. And they look at Southwest New Hampshire as one of 7 regions in the state from a marketing point of view. It's somewhat similar to the region as Monadnock United Way looks at it. It's somewhat similar to the way that the Southwest Region Planning Commission looks at it. So there are no, absolute boundaries. But if you think in terms of Cheshire County and Western Hillsborough County, that would be a pretty good way to do it. I'd also point out that the Greater Peterborough Chamber of Commerce, has members that are not just in Peterborough. And the Greater Keene Chamber of Commerce has members in something like 45 different communities already pre-merger, including communities in northern Massachusetts and Windham County in Vermont. So this idea of being a regional, having some regional focus is not a brand new idea. As far as public forums are concerned, those of you who can recall way back to pre-pandemic times, our chamber had been working on a series called the Regional Issues Series, and that just by name alone suggested that the topics that we chose had regional implications. We made sure that those were open to anybody, not just chamber members. And we actually did have people traveling from some distance to attend those. We've done a little bit of that kind of in the format we're using this morning since then, and we're in the process of trying to figure out how best to do that going forward. Hopefully we'll be able to get back to in-person events like that. As far as diluting the marketing effort, I think that's a fair point. I think it's something we're mindful of. We certainly don't intend to do that. And we're not suggesting that any individual community in the region should not do its own marketing or its own promoting, or that any company shouldn't do that. As far as I'm concerned, you should do all of that you plan to do. What this kind of pan-regional effort to market the region is about is kind of an umbrella plan within which all of these other marketing efforts can live and operate. So that's the plan. We're doing some very quick work right now based on some CARES Act money that came through the state to promote the region with a digital marketing campaign that's underway right now. And we're waiting to hear from a federal agency about a larger grant that will carry that, hopefully, if we're successful, carry that through for 2 or 3 years from now. So that's that. Tom or Patty, do you want to add any to that?
I think you've done a great job covering it, Phil. Elizabeth, if Phil has answered all your parts of your question, let us know. But the one part I would add into the dilution of marketing efforts is, I think in many ways, this is an opportunity to do just the opposite. I think the ability for us to promote the region and then individual communities in the region get stronger. We've always sort of been the weak stepchild in the eyes of some folks that are housed and conquered. And I think when you're talking about an organization that's 700 and maybe more members going forward, I think there may be more opportunity now for us to promote the region and the individual communities within the region.
Great. Tom.
That real quick.
Yeah.
Bill. So I do think this is an opportunity because this section of the state really does seem to be forgotten with the rest of the state, and definitely there needs to be a stronger effort for us to compete with the communities further to the east. I am just concerned about making sure we have a clear definition of what we're actually trying to promote. And if we are saying that we're going to come up with a regional campaign that promotes the southwest region of the state, I just heard Phil say, well, we have some in Massachusetts, we have some in Vermont. And so I'm just wondering how much further this merger will take us. And do we have that really defined so that we can have a good unified effort to promote this section of the state?
Yeah, I think I think the promoting the region effort is very mindful of that, and we're not going to get too diffuse. You know, I mentioned we have members in Massachusetts and Vermont. I'm not suggesting that we're going to be promoting Massachusetts and Vermont. That's not on the table at the moment. But think Cheshire County and the Kentucky River Valley as the way to define the region for the moment. Matthew Cabana had a question about the name, and I know Tom had said something about that earlier. As he said, we have not decided what the exact name is, but it would not be unreasonable to expect that it'll be something like the Greater Keene and Peterborough Chamber or something like that in the short term. And Tom alluded to the fact that this is a bridge year. Anytime two organizations come together, there are lots of things that need to be sorted out and lots of logistics that need to be to work through. And we don't want to get ahead of the promoting the region effort in naming this this organization because the branding effort that's part of promoting the region longer term may come up with something completely different. When the two chambers north of us, the Hanover and Lebanon chambers, merged last year, they ended up calling themselves the Upper Valley Business Alliance. So it doesn't even have to be conceivably something that has the name chamber even in it, or it may not have the words Keene or Peterborough in it. I don't know. So we just simply don't know that. But in the short term, it'll be something that clearly identifies both Keene and Peterborough. Karen Hatcher, do you want to reiterate what you've got there in the box?
Well, my question is really just a prompt to you, Phil, to talk about, you know, in our discussions, we talked a lot about different ways that various chambers around the state had come together, different models to leverage, you know, their work, and also what you know, we're not the first to do this, obviously, and the economic benefits and the kind of the compulsion to do it, the need to do it right now. I mean, I think we found like that it was more than a nice to do, but really more of a must kind of do something. And I think the different models we looked at, if you could just speak to some of that, and I'm sorry that I'm not being more concise in my question.
That's okay. I get the point, and let me just give one little anecdotal story here, and that is that we belong to something called ACCE, which is the Association of Chamber of Commerce Executives, and it's a national trade association that has, I think, something like 1,400 chambers from around the country that belong to it, and they have an annual convention that in various places around the country and in Canada even. They have members in Canada. We didn't do one this past year for obvious reasons, at least in person. But the last one that I went to in 2019 there are a lot of breakout sessions. And they had a breakout sessions that called something about merging. It was the most attended session of the entire 4 days. There were over 100 people that showed up at that session. So what that tells you is that this is not that unusual, as Karen is talking about, and it is even being was sort of positioned as something that's become necessary, and it's happening all over the country. I mentioned Hanover and Lebanon. Just on the other side of Temple Mountain from Peterborough, the Sauhegan and Merrimack chambers have merged within the past year. On the Seacoast, there's a Seacoast Alliance of chambers, which includes, and there are a bunch of them over there, from Portsmouth down to Hampton and Exeter and up through Dover and Rochester in that area. So that they are now part of, they have a kind of a loose affiliation. They're not quite merged, but this is something that is very common now. And part of it is that do you really need, everybody knows how difficult it is to sustain a small nonprofit. It's very, very hard work, and most of you have had involvement in that. So do we really need 4 or 5 websites? Do we really need 4 or 5 databases? Do we really need 4 or 5 of payrolls? Do we need, all of these kinds of things eat up resources, and we hope that what this will do, among other things, is to put some economies of scale into place and reduce the overall kind of administrative costs and that is involved in doing chamber work. So I hope that helps, Karen.
And so I think
Bob Edwards.
Okay.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Tom.
No, I was just going to say, I think there's a couple of comments in the chat room that expand upon the thought of merging other organizations. And we had one question about the Jaffrey organization. And I'd just like to mention that since our announcement was released in the media, we have had a couple of other chambers in the area give us a ring to say, what's going on and maybe we should talk. So those are extremely preliminary, but obviously what we've begun is probably ringing true with a lot of chambers, and it echoes what Phil has talked about in other parts of the state.
Yeah, and I would add to that something that, speaking of the state, as most of you know, that over the last couple of years, the Bureau of Economic Affairs was formed in state government, BEA, and that has forced or provided an opportunity for Taylor Caswell, who leads that group, to kind of say, how can we efficiently work with various regions of the state? And he's really kind of attached himself to the idea that chambers are the best link between the business community and state government. And there are right now something close to 50 chambers in New Hampshire. And he doesn't want to deal with, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I'm kind of reading between the lines here. He doesn't want to deal with 50 organizations. So in distributing some funds to chambers to do certain work using CARES Act money, he said, I'm only going to deal with 7. And he picked the 7 regions that already are in place for travel and tourism. And he said, I want a lead chamber in each of those regions to be the one that we're going to deal with as state government. So we're getting a little bit of encouragement from state government about those efficiencies as well. And that has really worked superbly well, even in the Merrimack Valley, when you have the Concord, Manchester, Nashua chambers. Those are all, vibrant chambers in their own right, but they ended up working really well together and working on their own kind of part of the state regionally. So I wanted to turn to Bob Edwards, who's a veteran of these kinds of things for I don't know how many years. I'm not even going to speculate. But Bob, what was your question and point and comment?
Thank you. I think you got a lot of great ideas here, and I just want to make sure everybody understands that from my feeling, the Keene Chamber is a great chamber and a lot of great people. And when I worked in Keene, had the opportunity to meet a lot of those great people, both in the municipality as well as the chamber. But I've also been a veteran of mergers from various viewpoints, and merger, it isn't always done from an equal basis. So, being selfish, I guess I'm thinking of when I go back to the Monadnock Region Association when it got formed. We saw that need. I've always felt that Peterborough could support a chamber, but I understand what everyone is saying here, and it's a different time, just like it is with the banks and so forth. But I just wonder if you might drill down a little bit more on the board composition. I know you mentioned things like you have representation on the board from both areas. I just wondered if it's equal board members. And I ask about opt-out provisions. Sometimes you don't know people until you live with them. And I didn't know if that's part of your proposal or any powers that Peterborough might have to make its own decisions doesn't sound like we'll have a separate board, which makes sense, but, and I guess the assets distribution, how are you going to handle that? Are you going to sell the building? I heard something about a location. Didn't sound like you were going to keep the building. If that's the case, how are you going to handle the asset question? So I guess I'm kind of getting down a little bit into the detail, and maybe we're not there yet, but I just thought maybe you'd comment on that quickly. Thank you.
Nothing wrong with getting down into the details, and I'm going to do what anybody in my position would do, and I'm going to punt that question over to Tom and Patty.
Well, I'll speak to board representation. When I was approached, number one, to be part of the board, and then to be the chair-elect for next year, I took that offer extremely seriously as a demonstration of how committed the Keene board is to make sure that we are well represented and make sure that there's a voice for Peterborough. And I take that very seriously. I want to be the voice for the members of Peterborough to make sure that they are well represented. And I know Karen feels the exact same way. So that's the starting point. That's not to say that as we move further down the road, that there isn't more room for bringing on more board members that have a Peterborough background. But I think this is a good start. And as we, figure out what the board is going to look like in the long term, there may be opportunity to shore up that membership. But like I said, when I was offered this position, I felt as though it was a strong commitment that we want to make this appear to be a true merger, which I believe it is. And I'm very proud and honored to be able to represent the folks in Peterborough. And I'm not putting words in Karen's mouth, but I'm sure she feels the same way.
Well, I'll put words in my own mouth and just say, as the town's community and economic development coordinator, I just really saw this as an important piece of the work we're doing as a town as well. So having this connection and being asked to be part of this initial board, I also take very seriously. And I think that the hope is that as positions open up, the Keene board is a large board, and as the positions open up, there will be opportunities to fill spots with Peterborough members. But I will also just say, Bob, that the Peterborough board itself is a small board, and a small but dedicated board that was really kind of hanging on to be able to figure out a transition here, and dedicated people, but it ended up being a pretty small number. So we want to build the representation for Peterborough back into this new organization's board. And anyone who is interested in that, I would say just let us know.
Tom, you want to add anything about the some of the other details that Bob was getting at?
Yeah, one thing, Bob, you alluded to, I too have been members of organizations that have merged and watched some be terrific after merger and some really struggle. So I think I'm uniquely qualified to say I know how it can go wrong as well as how it can go right. We will have, and maybe Mark Freiberger's on the call can refresh my memory, but I think we're going to have 5 or 6 open seats this coming year on the chamber board. We want to fill them with the best possible people. And, if the 5 best possible people are from Peterborough, that would be wonderful. There is no, as Karen and Patty just talked about, when we wanted to bring people in from Peterborough, it was a pretty small board. So I think proportionally, we took a very large portion of a small board and brought them over to the new merge association. I will commit to you that this is really, we will look for the best and most talented people to be on the board going forward. That's really our singular goal.
And Adam Caseta, I think, is also on the line here, but he's been involved in our governance committee, which looks for board members. And like any organization that has kind of a diverse geography and membership, we try to make sure that we have good representation, both geographically and by sector and by size of organization. And I think we've done a pretty good job at that, and I think we'll continue to do that. We have board members from from Walpole, and that has that's made a big difference because when the board meets, we have a perspective that we didn't have before, that from the kind of northern part of our catchment area. I don't see Adam right now, but I think he was on there. Anyway, Bob, you mentioned something about the building and the bylaws of the Greater Peterborough Chamber do have a procedure for what happens if that organization ceases to exist. It's a fairly routine thing in any set of bylaws for a nonprofit organization. And one of the things that is in there, and I don't have the language in front of me, but it's something to the effect that they can transfer assets to a like-minded organization or something along those lines. Another Chamber of Commerce certainly falls into that category. And the Peterborough Chamber Board did vote at one point to make that transfer to the Greater Keene Chamber so that the surviving entity, so to speak, from a very technical point of view, at least in the short term, is still going to be the Greater Keene Chamber in terms of the EIN that we have and the 990 that we file and all of those kinds of things. That may change beyond a year or two, but in the very short term, that will be the case. And when we have a name that we'll operate under, we'll probably be filing a DBA so that we'll be known to the state as marketing ourselves with a slightly different name than either organization has had in the past. Longer term, whether or not there's a formal name change, that's also a possibility. We just haven't gotten there yet. But in the very short term, the surviving entity from a EIN and 990 point of view is going to be the Greater Keene Chamber.
Thank you.
Let's see, John, Hanover, Lebanon have created the same alliance that is called the Upper Valley Alliance. It's a great merger and very active. John, do you want to add to that at all?
Yes, I was pretty excited when I saw this come across. I've been trying to get Cheryl a little bit more involved, and I think her trepidation might have been that the Peterborough board was kind of small, and we're a small but busy store. But up in this area, I think considering the fact we have Hanover, which is a draw for amazing demographics from all over the world, quite frankly, because of the college, we have found that it's actually increased our business. Lebanon's not a drop in the bucket, but it's a small city compared to some of the bigger cities around the state. And where we have been very active, now we have a little bit more involvement from the smaller communities around us, which are Walpole sized, Jaffrey sized. We have Enfield, Keene, and those different communities in our area. And this merger has made us all a little bit more active, and it gives the smaller businesses a little bit more of a voice. I heard a little questions from the city manager of Keene, and I understand that. I don't think merging with a smaller entity and the other people around you is going to hurt the business of Keene at all. Quite frankly, I think it's benefited my business, it's benefited Hanover's business, and I know that Hubert's involvement in the chamber locally, and now the opportunity to get out and get exposed a little bit more in the greater Keene area. I think it's fantastic. If it's anything even remotely as successful as what the Hanover, Lebanon, and greater area have created, I'm pretty excited about this merger. I think it's good stuff. Very, very, very progressive.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Appreciate
You, John. That's great feedback, and we will undoubtedly be calling on you and others like you with businesses in and around Peterborough for some ongoing input and guidance as things unfold. So thank you for that.
I welcome any phone calls to give. I mean, my email is available, and because I think between the Peterborough Huberts and me being the outside sales manager for Huberts as a company, I have a big interest in having this small group, especially down in that area, just it's great exposure for everybody that's in a small business.
Okay, thank you very much. I see an old friend, Greg Tewksbury, there. He's in a dark room, it appears, sort of like what I'm in. But I saw he had something in the chat box there. Greg, do you want to chime in?
And my question, I think, was addressed by Tom regarding the Jaffrey Chamber. So when I look at this, Phil, I see from Savings Bank of Walpole's perspective, really more from a regional perspective. My hat's off to the two boards. Bringing two nonprofits together with no consideration paid, it's really hard work. And to be able to put the best interest of the region ahead of social, parochial interest, I think is exactly what we need to do. There are no borders anymore when we look at regions and for small businesses. The strength of one city or town, leaks over to our neighboring cities and towns. And so we really need to look at things, I think, as a region. And this, very much like what Laura's company is going through with Granite One, probably, most likely, come spring or summer, will be a sister hospital with Cheshire. And when we think about our two regions' largest employers, being part of one, it only makes sense for the chamber to think, very much along those lines as being part of one and representing, the economic interest of our businesses in our region. So I think there's an opportunity to actually work with the hospitals and understand. It may be a little premature, but there's some really good minds between the two hospitals and why this makes sense to do this regional alliance. And I think as the chamber comes together, in the months ahead, tapping those resources, again, at our largest employers may provide some insight into what can work. When you put the interest of the organization ahead of, of the region, for the betterment of us all, as opposed to just, thinking about it in isolation. So that's why I put out there Jaffrey. When I think of our region, I really think of the Monadnock region, from our borders in New Hampshire, up to the region that you talked about, north. And I think we can do a lot better job promoting us as one when we think about, the business community in the Southwest. I was encouraged by John's, remarks on the success of the Upper Valley, what's happened in that combination. And I think that can occur, in the Southwest as well.
Well, that's certainly the intent, and it won't be easy. This is not a snap your fingers kind of, instant overnight success kind of thing, but that's certainly the intent. And you mentioned the hospitals. I'll use this opportunity to just note for people on the call that our annual gala this year is on January 14th. And if you haven't received an invitation to it or have any interest in it, just email us at info@keenechamber.com. It is co-presented by the Greater Peterborough and Greater Keene Chambers. It will be a mostly virtual event with a very small, socially distanced, in-person live streaming place at the Colonial Theater's new space, new performance space. So it'll be emanating from there and live streamed. But the reason that I thought of it, Greg, was that our speaker that night is Joanne Conroy. And for those of you who don't know who Joanne Conroy is, she is head of Dartmouth Hitchcock. The whole thing, I think, is probably the easiest way to say that. And she's an extremely impressive person. And so she already knows and understands and sees the value of looking at this part of the state regionally. And that's what she's doing. So you'll hear more, I think, from her at that time about that. Let's see. Yeah, go ahead.
Bob Meissner here. I live in Jaffrey, and I really appreciated Greg's comments. My comments are two. One about board size and filling those seats. Let me say it this way. I see from everything that has been said so far, that this will succeed and it will grow. I think there's some chambers that need to see that the Keene Peterborough efforts and merger are going to be successful, and what the outcomes are going to be in terms of marketing and in terms of inclusion and in terms of just how the flow comes before they, could be Jaffrey, could be any of the ones in our region, step up and say, yeah, I want to be a part of this. So it is a work in progress, and I just think it'll take time. The first part was about boards, and there I think that it's wise, or let me just say this way. I can't judge if it's wise, but it might be a suggested that we leave seats open so that those communities that do look from the fringes at this opportunity say to themselves, well, there's still room for me. There's still room for us. There's still room for my town or our area. So those are my comments. I'll stop there. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. And we have, we've worked with chambers throughout the region, and most of the other chambers in the region, in fact, all the other chambers in the region are essentially all volunteer run. So they may have an employee for 10 hours a week or something like that, but they're essentially volunteer chambers. But we've worked with them for several years on a number of things, and we expect to continue to do that. Chris Halverson, I know had a comment in there. Do you want to add to that at all, Chris? Oh, she's either
I'm
muted.
here.
Oh, there she is.
Yeah. No, my comment was just about Jaffrey. You've
Okay.
covered that. Yeah.
Okay, great. I see Jamie Trowbridge put something in the chat box that I've kind of alluded to, but haven't really said too much about. So Jamie, do you want to talk a little bit more about the Why We Love It Here campaign?
I was just following up on Phil's mention that we have a contract right now with the state that allows us to do some marketing to help recover from COVID. And it's been, because of the requirements of the contract, we've had to do this in a very rushed fashion. But I'm more excited about the longer term prospects of promoting the whole region starting with a branding campaign that would allow us all to have input into what we call this place and what is it about the region that we really want to promote. So that's in the works too. Our original vision for that was to have it be entirely self-funded by donations from within the region. And we still expect that we'll need donations from businesses and organizations in the region. But we're hopeful that we're going to get a grant from the U.S. Economic Development Administration to jumpstart that program. And this was an initiative that Keene took on by itself, independent of Peterborough. Even from the beginning, it was conceived as a region-wide promotion. And so this merger just makes this whole thing work even better.
Okay, great. Let's see. Karen Peterson had a question or a thought. Karen, do you want to jump in? Maybe she jumped out.
No,
Oh, there she is.
I'm here.
Oh, you were on mute.
I don't think I really need to say any more than I did. I think this will be positive for an organization like MDS because we've been members of 3 or 4 chambers over a number of years, and try to be as active as we can in all of them. And it's a stretch sometimes. So, given the impact that all of us have with each other, I think this is a really positive thing. And the other thing I wanted to mention, and maybe you're not ready for this, is you have a sense of like a timeline for rollout, what we can expect as a member, nothing for 6 months or, stuff like that. Yeah. And thank you again for all your good work.
Yeah, good questions, Karen. The idea for a rough rollout, if you want to think of it that way, is that we hope to have the kind of the legal and technical aspects of this complete within the next month or so. And after that, you'll hear much more communication, particularly the Peterborough chamber members will hear much more communication and from us, and we'll be engaging people in how to decide things like, do we want to have 2 golf tournaments? It comes down, and sometimes to some very practical things. Are we going to continue to do business after hours, and what does that look like? Is it once a month for the whole entity, or is there more than one a month, or do we alternate month to month going from one part of the region to another? So those kinds of things will be parts of discussions of various committees in the chamber. Anybody who's interested in being part of that discussion or being part of any of the committees, let me know or let us know. One good generic email address, as I mentioned earlier, is info@keenechamber.com. So if you send anything to us through that, it will find the appropriate person to respond pretty quickly. I think those all go to Nancy and Nancy Bishop, for those of you who know her, and she's pretty good at getting back to people right away. So let us know if you want to be part of those discussions. I see that Rebecca Landry put the link to for tickets for the gala in the chat box. We will get that out to everybody on this call, as well as the link that Jamie Trowbridge put in about promoting the region, the Why We Love It Here campaign. So we'll get that out to everybody so you can look at that as well. And Jamie notes that he's on the Greater Keene Chamber Board, and he lives in Peterborough. So there's another kind of representation that of Peterborough being represented on the board. I'm mindful of everyone's time. And I thought that I see Adam has jumped back in a little bit, and he had to jump off for a second. And I don't know, Adam, if you want to talk a little bit about the sort of the technical aspects of what's coming up. And I did mention some of those, but I welcome your thoughts.
Hi, everybody. I'm Adam Caseta. I'm a board member for the Greater Keene Chamber of Commerce and former chair. I'm also a lawyer here in Keene and been working on some of the legal aspects. And I had somebody come in my office here, so I've been a little bit. I jumped back on just as I heard Phil, sort of talking about bylaws, and I said, I think I missed something here. But we're following the bylaws of each organization as far as this merger goes. And, obviously the Greater Keene Chamber of Commerce is a similarly situated organization to the Greater Peterborough Chamber of Commerce, or we wouldn't even have this discussion. And, according to the Peterborough bylaws, when you're winding up an organization, and maybe you touched on this, Phil, you're required to send any assets over. So we've taken care of that. As far as the legal aspects go, and there were 2 ways to do this: either we start a new entity, or we just use one of them that already has an EIN and existing accounts. So that's what we've chosen to do, because it's a little easier just to use the one existing entity. And technically speaking, the corporation that is the Peterborough Chamber of Commerce will dissolve, but only on paper. And I think that's been a pretty clear message here, is the people, the mission, the membership will all transfer over into the new entity. And there's been a lot of discussion about the naming of that. And that's really, again, just a piece of paper that I'll take care of, whether it's a DBA, doing business as, or just renaming the corporation. And there's all kinds of corporations out there that do business under different names. You could have Ham Sandwich Inc. that does business as the Greater Keene Chamber of Commerce, but not actually the truth. But you can do that. So we're mindful of having a marketing, from a marketing perspective for the region, using something that is appropriate there. But I leave that to the marketing people, not to the people that push paper like me. So I think that we're looking at a vote date, or I would say vote date, but a close date for December 15. But this deal has been, I say deal, but this merger has been in the works for a long time. And I think Karen said it was at least a year we've been discussing it, and I was involved in that then. And so my goal here, as far as ease of accounting goes, is to have the changeover be effective for the first of the year, so that we have nice clean books, and that's just easier to look back at, and from an accounting standpoint. But we look to have this completely finalized on the 15th, and then when the marketing people who know more about this stuff than me, from both Peterborough and from Keene and the surrounding towns, decide what the best way is to promote the region through a name of this entity, then we'll change the name on paper. So really, the legal aspect of this is surprisingly simple. But the real work, as I caught Phil say this as I was just getting back on the call here, the real work is to be done, after we've done the paperwork on it. And I know the people on the board well. This is my 6th and final year on the Keene Chamber board, and I've been able to meet the people on the Peterborough Chamber board as well. Actually, some of them I knew anyway, because of the crossover that's inherent in the region here. So I trust that we've got a strong crew here that is committed to the region, and I think that work is going to be ongoing, and will be more effective when we have a bigger group and a bigger reach. So anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. But it's not that interesting. It's just legal jargon.
Thank you, Adam. And I think it's very funny that you think you're getting off the board this year. But anyway, I realized that I skipped right over a point that Chuck had made, or a question that Chuck had a little while ago. Do you want to jump in, Chuck?
Sure, thank you very much. I'm Chuck Redfern. I'm with Pathways for Keene. We are a fundraising organization for the rail trail system here in Keene, which is also developing into other areas. Pathways isn't, but other rail trail organizations are popping up throughout the region. And so my question is, or my comment to open up is, we're a member of the Keene Chamber of Commerce, and they've done an excellent job providing us with benefits and opportunities for the membership amount that we as a nonprofit have to pay. So my question is, though, once we become a bigger merged organization, will those same opportunities and benefits exist for all the nonprofits in our communities? Or will those be changed, curtailed, enhanced, whatever?
Well, by that, I think you're referring to those organizations that are members of the chamber now. Is that right? Of either chamber now.
Chambers, yes.
And by the way, we all owe Chuck a debt of gratitude for the work he does on the rail trail system. He's been doing this for I don't want to say how many years, Chuck, but a long time, and it does a really superb job. And the rail trail system is, as most of you know, one of the real amazing assets that this region has, and will somehow kind of exhibit itself as part of our brand, I'm convinced, when we go down that path. So as far as the benefits are concerned, I hope that it's going to be a net plus in terms of the benefits that people receive. But it should not in any way take away from any of the benefits that members have right now, in terms of access to marketing tools and the ability to get the word out about your organizations. Merging the memberships, we're already doing that in the kind of the back room in terms of the database, and making sure that we have an integrated database. But and we haven't quite decided on what the membership levels and structure and all that kind of looks like. The difference between the two chambers right now in terms of its membership levels is not all that significant. They're quite similar, so I don't think it's going to look very different to any member going forward when they see what the membership levels are and what the benefits are.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay, Chuck, thank you. I am mindful of the time. I know we're getting to the witching hour, and I want to just turn it back quickly to Tom and Patty for any closing comments.
And very quickly,
Plus we have
again, thank
closing
you all.
comments, right?
Oh, go ahead, Patty. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Lastly, I would just like to dovetail on to what Phil said earlier about opportunities for input. You know, as we go forward and we know we have some important decisions to make as to what our organization is going to look like in terms of, you know, program content, all sorts of different things. We encourage input from members. We're not looking to make all these decisions in a vacuum. We really value your input, and we think that you should be a part of this process to really help build the best chamber possible. So I would just encourage your participation. We welcome it, and we'll keep you abreast of those opportunities as best as we can. But I think it's important to mention that your participation is going to be really key in helping us form the best possible chamber for our members. Thank you.
For the first time in a long time, I have nothing to say. Except thank you all very much for being with us today. Great input. We look forward to future input because that's how we're going to collectively make one tremendous chamber going forward. Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you everybody for joining. I just note that Pam Lorimer from the Jack Daniels Inn, made a question about tourism, and clearly we'll be looking and working closely with the Travel Council as we've tried to in the past, but we'll try to make sure that they're part of all of these deliberations and discussions. And with that, I thank you all very much for your time this morning, and we'll probably be doing this again at some point in the next month or two, so that further questions can be answered. But in the meantime, thank you all very much, and have a great weekend.